All right, everyone. Again, thanks for joining for What's New with Stewart Filmscreen. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Stephen Mayo. I am the Director of Training for New Tech Group here in the Middle Atlantic. A lot of interesting stuff going on with Stewart these days. Most of you are probably familiar with Stewart, at least to some extent. But we'll talk about this kind of a little bit in reverse order. So we'll talk about what's new, and then we'll talk a little bit about Roy, which is our screen designer software. And then after that, we'll just do a little bit on Stewart's website to show you some of the tools that are available there and a little refresher on what makes Stewart unique and different, what makes them important. So before we get started, let's talk a little bit about two-piece projection. So obviously we call it two-piece projection because it's two pieces. It's a projector and a screen. Often I'll be talking to people and they'll ask who our biggest competitor is, and they're talking about other screen manufacturers. But the reality is that's not our biggest competitor. The biggest competitor we have is actually a painted wall. So many customers, especially in the DIY space, are very happy just to have a white or sometimes not even white colored wall that they're happy to shine their projector onto. And the reality is, for a number of reasons, they're not getting anywhere near the performance level they could be getting if they were to have a dedicated screen. So let's go ahead and step ahead. Let's do the fact that you should be hearing my voice now. If you don't, you may need to rejoin the meeting. You may need to call in, something along those lines, but you should be hearing my voice now. A little bit of housekeeping. Please keep yourself muted except to ask a question. Obviously, if you have a question, please feel free to stop me and ask that question. This time is yours, and we hope to make it beneficial for you. And again, seriously, keep yourself muted. None of us need to hear your side conversations or anything like that. It does get distracting. So with that, let's step into it. Fixed series. So this is your traditional kind of hang it on the wall, always there, traditional film screen. We come in a couple different flavors. Those of you that have been doing Stewart for a long time may have noticed that a couple of years ago we had a name change. So we used to refer to these as the Luxus series. So there was the Luxus Deluxe, there was the Luxus Standard, and now we've changed that to wall screen. It's a little more straightforward in what it means. It is in fact just a screen that's hanging on the wall. And we still have a few versions of it. We have Wall Screen Deluxe. That's our traditional 3¼ inch border. It bevels in toward the screen. And this is our most common, most popular screen. It's available in virtually all of our screen materials, and we'll talk about screen materials in a little bit. And this is kind of the gold standard. This is what we see most often. We have the Wall Screen Deluxe UST. This is a newer product. We've seen an explosion over the past few months or years in ultra short throw projectors. These allow us to put a projector into the room and to not have it take up ceiling space, to not worry about sight lines, things like that. And the problem is sometimes we want a traditional screen for that. There are a few materials that are appropriate for that, but with that ultra short throw angle that the projector is sitting at, we can sometimes get a shadow box at the bottom of the screen where the projected image is just catching the bottom of that bezel, and it's creating a line at the bottom where we're not getting the entire image. With the Wall Screen Deluxe UST, we're actually taking and extending that bezel until it meets the screen material sharply, so we don't get any of that shadow box potential. And then finally, we've got Wall Screen 2.5. This is a 2½ inch border. This is a little different than our Wall Screen Standard, which is a 1½ inch square. This is a 2½ inch. It's still beveled. It gives us a little bit of that wiggle room. No projection optics are perfect, so sometimes we need to hide some of the imperfections out around the edges on a light absorptive material, and this gives us a little more viewing area for the space versus a Wall Screen Deluxe. And you can see these MSRP starting prices. These are a lot more reasonably priced than perhaps they used to be. There have been some price moves over the past couple of years to make these more affordable without sacrificing any quality. It was really just finding efficiencies in the manufacturing process that allowed us to do that. That having been said, we will see some slight price moves as of April 1st. I don't have those today, but we'll make sure that we get those updated for you. We do have a little bit of a mix of direct and indirect dealers here on the call today. So if you're an indirect dealer, obviously get with Dave at TechSource or one of your outside guys to talk about that. Continuing the Fix series, we have the Balon series. This has been extremely popular. Comes in 3 flavors. We've got the Balon borderless. This is a true edgeless screen, so there is no border at all. It is a true borderless screen. We've got the Balon Edge UST, that's ultra short throw, and that comes with our Blackhawk UST screen material, which is a lenticular screen material designed specifically for ambient light rejection and ultra short throw projection options. But what's nice about the Balon Edge and the Balon Edge UST is this is a 1/2 inch Velux wrapped or light absorptive wrapped material around the edge. So we do get just a little bit of wiggle room again for those imperfections in optics or perhaps slight miscalculations in the mounting of the projector. And we get also enhanced perception of color and contrast when we surround a image with a black border. If those of you that are driving at some point notice when you go out today that you actually look up at a traffic light, nearly every traffic light you'll ever see actually has a black border around the red, green, and yellow lights themselves, because that's kind of how the human eye works. We see colors more clearly when it's surrounded by a black border. So that Balon Edge and Balon Edge UST really are kind of that ideal surface where we're getting a virtually edgeless screen, but we're getting still that little bit of area to hide imperfections and to enhance the contrast and color. LED options are available for these screens. So if the customer wants that multicolor RGBW LED behind the screen, those are available on all of the Balon screens. So let's step forward into our below ceiling motorized. So below ceiling means that you can see the actual can where the screen resides. So it's going to be mounted either to the ceiling or to the wall. And we're going to recess the screen material itself up into the visible can. So a few years ago, again, for those of you that have been here for a little while, we had the Model A, Model B, et cetera, et cetera. And again, it was kind of confusing. And one of the other reasons that we moved over to the Luxus or to the wall screen nomenclature for the fixed screens is because now Luxus is a very specific motorized screen. So this is a visible below ceiling screen, comes in a few colors. It's a fairly attractive screen. You can even get the end caps in brushed aluminum. Really a nice looking screen, and comes with these days your 12-volt trigger standard. There are additional control options available, RS-232, IR, etc. But that 12-volt trigger, which is by far our most common control option, comes with that. Cabaret is our designer visible can. So this is a sleeker, more attractive visible roller can, available with LED uplighting, available in a variety of colors. We've even had some dealers order these in primer and have their local auto body shop custom paint it to a color that matches whatever the client wants. SEMA below ceiling. So SEMA, as most of you will be aware, is our premium, more entry level and offering. This is going to be Stewart level of quality with many fewer options. Obviously, with the Stewart product, we have any size, any aspect ratio, just an incredible amount of options available. SEMA is a little more limited in what we offer. It's fixed, it's below ceiling, it's above ceiling in predetermined sizes, and perforation is only available in the SEMA line in a fixed product. And then we have the Oasis. Oasis is really a unique offering, I think, in the screen world. It is a weather-resistant motorized can. So the internals would be used with steel is using things like brass to allow us to have something that can be mounted outside under an eave in a gazebo, things like that, and allows us to have that weather resistant can. The can itself is weather resistant. The screen material is not necessarily. So make sure that you don't have direct exposure to the elements. You don't want the screen material itself getting rained on or snowed on or anything like that, or necessarily getting direct sunlight. So keep that in mind, but still it gives you an option to do front or rear projection material in an outdoor environment. So moving on now to above ceiling. So this is going to be a hidden can. This is where once the screen is retracted, we don't see any visible can, any visible screen material. We have the SEMA above ceiling. So this is going to be, again, our still premium product, but it's going to be at a slightly lower price point, and it's going to have fewer options available versus a traditional Stewart branded product. We've got SEMA NT. This is for non-tensioned. For residential theater type projects, I do recommend tab tensioning. It is going to make the surface lay a lot more flat. It's going to give a better overall presentation. But the NT can get us into budgets that we simply can't get into in a tab tensioned product. So you can see on the SEMA AC and on the Cascade on the right, you've got that parabolic curve on the left and the right with the tab tensioning, whereas the NT is a straight drop. It is going to be more susceptible to not laying as flat, but it's a less expensive option. And then finally, the Cascade. This is going to be your Stewart branded above ceiling product. There is actually a series of Cascade products, depending really mostly on size and masking options, but it's all part of the Cascade series, and it's really just an outstanding product. Stealth is our trapdoor screen, and I want to take just a minute to talk about our Stealth trapdoor versus pretty much everybody else's. What most screen companies do is they put a couple of hooks on the trapdoor, and then the batten, which is the weight bar at the bottom of the screen, is extended slightly so it can catch those hooks and pull the door closed. There's a couple of problems with that. First of all, over time, just the act of pulling up that door every time, the vinyl material will begin to stretch, which will cause the door to sag slightly. So you won't have that nice clean finish. The other problem is, in order to be able to service that screen, should something go wrong, you can't open the door. So that means they need to extend the casing and add an access panel to get up there and service the motor or make adjustments to the black drop, things like that. So what we do is we actually have two motors on this screen. We have one for the screen roller itself and a second dedicated motor for the trap door. And that means that the trapdoor is never going to sag. It's always going to sit perfectly. And importantly, that motor's on a clutch. So should you need to service the screen, you can physically pull the door open without damaging that motor. So our trapdoor is a little more expensive than some of the competitive products out there, but in my opinion, well worth it as far as reliability and final presentation. And then Visionary is probably my favorite above ceiling series as far as value for the dollar. This is a screen that's actually in a couple different pieces. You've got the can, you've got the roller assembly and screen, which can be added after the fact or removed. And then you've got your trim plate. And what that means is a few things. We can order the can first and install that during the construction phase without the screen material in place, thus meaning that we're not running potential of dust or other sorts of damage getting up into the material. It also means that there isn't any way for the screen to walk away, if you will. So this is a really nice option. It gives a very nice finished presentation because we have a slightly smaller opening for the screen to drop down out of, and we can actually mud right up to that trim ring and get just an excellent presentation. So masking, this is really kind of what Stewart is known for in many ways. We've got a few different options, and this is just one of or two of the options that we have. Virtually all of our screens are able to be offered with masking options. And masking is important because we don't always watch things in the same aspect ratio. We have classic Hollywood, which is anywhere from a 1.25 to 1 to a 1.33 to 1. If you're watching Casablanca, that's not widescreen. That's in a 4:3 presentation. You've got 50 years of television in that 4:3 presentation. Then we've got European aspect ratios like 1.66 to 1. We've got 1.78 to 1, which is our modern television standard, 1.85 to 1, 2.35 or 2.4 to 1, also known as scope. And then we've even got wider than scope with movies like Ben-Hur, things like that. So when we employ masking, that means we can physically change the shape of our screen to match the content that we're watching. Most masking systems will only give us two aspect ratios. So we can do vertical masking, which will allow us to take 2.35 down to 16:9 for switching between movies and TV or sports. Or we can do horizontal masking, which will allow us to have a larger 16:9 screen to do TV and sports, but then mask down to 235 when we want to watch a movie. And a good question to ask your customer when deciding which is appropriate is, what's more important to you, movies or TV and sports? And depending on their answer, that's going to be your native aspect ratio, because your native aspect ratio will always be the larger of the aspect ratios. Here are a couple options that are essentially no compromise. Director's choice, we've got four-way masking that's constantly variable. So we can have a screen that covers essentially our entire wall, and we can mask down to any shape, any size within that. We use RS-232 control for this. We've got a very complex control system that'll integrate with all of your major control manufacturers. But again, you can have, in this case, you could have a DVD 16:9, you could have a cable 16:9, you could have a Blu-ray 16:9 that's bigger, and then you could have a 4K HDR 16:9 that's bigger still, all depending on the projector you're using in combination with the control system and what your customer wants to watch. These are not inexpensive, but they definitely go into a lot of homes, so don't discount this. And then Vistascope is our constant height masking system. So this is going to have vertical masking panels moving in from the outside. So we'll typically specify these in 2:4 to 1, and then we'll preset various masking options depending on what the customer wants to watch, anywhere from 185 to 178 to 133, which is traditional classic Hollywood and television. So a couple options here that really make for an exceptional viewing experience for the customer. Cascade is available with that traditional masking, as is Stealth. Visionary is not. With that smaller opening, we don't have space to drop masking panels. So just keep that in mind. But this, again, allows us to have that 240 scope movie viewing experience, and then drop down masking panels so that we have a black, pardon me, a black border when we're watching 16:9 or television or sports. Talking a little bit about materials and fabrics. So a big part of the performance of any screen material is going to be what the particulate size is and how smoothly it lays. So if you ever have a particulate size or a bump, if you will, in the screen that is bigger than a pixel, then you're not going to be able to fully resolve that pixel structure. So all of our screen materials are 16K plus ready and have been for some time. So I do occasionally get the question, hey, you know, which Stewart materials are 4K ready? And the answer is all of them. So they all are today ready for up to 16K plus. Looking at some of the materials, this can get a little intimidating because we see just a ton of different materials here. And the reality is only a handful of them are going to be your go-to materials. And if you have something outside of the box, call me, call your rep. We'll be happy to walk you through it and make sure you choose the right material for the job. It's also important to understand that most of these materials are the same price. Couple couple exceptions there, but they are mostly the same price. And that's partly by design. One, because the manufacturing process is essentially the same for all of them, but also because we don't want you to choose a best material for what it costs, but really for the application. We often talk about, hey, what's the best material for projector XYZ? Most often, our determination of the screen material is not going to be dictated by the projector. Rather, it's going to be dictated by the room environment. And then we essentially got three types of rooms. We've got a dedicated room, which we see on the right side of your screen there. And our two most popular materials there are going to be Studio Tech 100 or Studio Tech 130. These are both reference white materials. And when I say reference, I mean that in a very literal way. Studio Tech 100 and its sister Snowmat 100 material, those are very commonly used actually in the color correction and the mastering of Hollywood content. They are true Lambertian surfaces, by which I mean they have a 180-degree viewing angle. They disperse light perfectly over that 180 degrees. They are completely color accurate. What you see is truly what you get. So if you're looking for the absolute best representation of what your client's projector can do, those are going to be the best option. The difficulty is because they disperse light so perfectly, that means that they have essentially zero ambient light rejection, which means if you have light surfaces adjacent to that material, you're going to shine light onto the material. The material will disperse that light, including to those light colored surfaces, which will then reflect the light back to them and cross-contaminate your contrast. So what we do in that case, when we have a dedicated space, but without those dark adjacent surfaces, is we apply just a little bit of optical gain to it. And that's what Studio Tech 130 gives us. It's still perfectly color correct. It is a reference white material. It is THX certified and all of that fun stuff, but has just enough gain to eliminate some of that cross contamination of light. We have Harmony G2, which is a woven screen. Stewart's position, and I agree with this, is that perforation is the better option for both video and audio performance, but there's a lot of people out there that are big fans of woven screens. So the Harmony G2, which actually is the newer version of our Harmony material, that's actually launching in April, on April 2nd, and is going to be really Stewart level performance from a woven screen. The second type of room that we talk about is going to be kind of our multi-purpose room. So that's when we need to have some sort of ALR, ambient light rejecting material. Firehawk G5 is going to be kind of that ideal screen that can straddle the world, if you will, between a space that's going to sometimes be viewed with all of the lights off with great light control. But then sometimes you're going to have the lights up. You're going to be watching the Super Bowl. You're going to be watching the World Cup, whatever, and you're going to have some lights up. So you need some of that ambient light rejection. And the Firehawk G5 is going to do an exceptional job with both of those environments. And then finally, we've got our high ambient light room. This is when we're putting a screen and projector in a living room, perhaps, where we don't have great window treatments, things along those nature. And Phantom HALR, HALR being high ambient light rejecting, is our high ambient light rejecting material. This does an exceptional job in very high ambient light environments, but still looks great when you turn the lights off. Phantom is a little more expensive, but still well within reach. The other thing I want to talk about is our ultra short throw compatible materials. Anything with gain tends to not work with ultra short throw projectors. You need to have something with the appropriate light dispersion characteristics to prevent hot spotting with an ultra short throw projector. The only ambient light rejecting material we have today is the Blackhawk UST. This is a lenticular screen. It works a little differently with its ambient light rejection than a traditional ALR screen. That is only available today in our Balon Edge screen frame system and is not available perforated. The other screen materials we have that will work well with a ultra short throw projector are going to be StudioTech 100 or GrayMat 70. StudioTech 100, as I said previously, has very little ambient light rejection capability. So in a dedicated space, this can be a really nice option. I was in a theater not too long ago that the reason they went with an ultra short throw projector was not for the aesthetics necessarily, but because they simply didn't have enough depth in the room to do a larger 120-inch screen with a traditional projector. So StudioTech 100 was the right choice for that space. GrayMat 70, not a true ALR screen material, but it does have some ALR properties. So this we'll see a lot with ultra short throw projectors that were perhaps ceiling mounted. So if we want to have a drop down screen that we can ceiling mount the projector and have some ambient light rejection, GrayMat 70 is the perfect option. And then AeroView 70 and Crystal View 70 are rear projection materials. So that will give us kind of our go-to material. So Snowmat 100, or rather StudioTech 100 or StudioTech 130 for dedicated spaces, Firehawk G5 and Phantom for our multi-purpose or high ambient light screen areas. And then finally, Blackhawk UST, StudioTech 100 or GrayMat 70 for our ultra short throw. So lots of options, but most of them are really for specialized purposes. So again, if you have those specialized purposes, give us a call and we'll help walk you through it. So I talked about these, StudioTech 130 and StudioTech 100. These are the reference standard. These are the materials by which all other materials are judged. It is the go-to for dedicated spaces and will give you the best performance in those spaces. So that's it for the slide deck before we move into a overview of our Roy screen designing software. Does anyone have any questions? All right, I'll take that as a no. And let's move on from here. All right, so for those of you that are direct dealers with Stewart, you should already have a login for this. If you don't, let us know and we'll help guide you through the process of how to get those credentials. For those of you that are indirect dealers, this is just a peek into kind of how we can build a screen to your needs. And we here at NewTek and at TechSource have access to this, so we can do anything that we're going to go through today. There are a number of things here that you can see. There's an online store for a quote unquote standard screen. Keep in mind that all Stewart products are built to order, so it's going to be custom built, whether it's a standard product or whether it's fully customized. So you're not necessarily going to save anything, if you will, by going with a pre-configured product. It just saves you a couple of steps in the ordering process. The biggest thing that we have here is the screen builder. So let's step right into that and build a new quote. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to select an item, and you can see there are a number of things that we've already discussed here: the Balon series, Cabaret, Cascade. We've got Luminous, which is our rigid product, but today we're going to do a wall mask system. So this is going to be a wall screen, traditional hanging on the wall, permanently mounted screen with masking. We'll configure it, and it's going to ask what masking we want. When we pull this, it's going to be 4-way, vertical, or horizontal. Most common is going to be vertical masking. This is going to be taking a 2.35 screen or scope screen down to 16:9 for TV and sports. And it'll show us this image here, what we're talking about. We'll do front projection. It's going to ask what aspect ratio. Now, this is our native aspect ratio. We can have these predefined ideas here. We can have 16:10. For those of you that aren't aware, 16:10 is a common aspect ratio in boardrooms and things of that nature. It comes from modern computer displays, which are 16:10, because you get 16:9 plus you get your taskbar at the bottom of your screen. So in this case, we're going to do 2:3:5:1, but I also want to point out that we can do custom. We can do any aspect ratio you want. Because we're building to order, if you have some sort of screen that you want, maybe a 2:1, we do that sometimes for that director's choice, 2:1 native aspect ratio, and then mask to what we need. Image diagonal, you'll note that these are all just every single inch. We can also do custom. So if we want something to be a fractional diagonal, we can do that, or we can dictate it by our width or our height rather than our diagonal. So in this case, let's go ahead and let's do 156-inch diagonal. And then what do we want to mask down to? Do we want to mask down to 185? Maybe we've got somebody who's only going to be using this as a screening room for movies and they don't intend to watch much, if any, TV. Most common, we're going to mask it down to 16:9. Now it's going to ask, do we need it to be acoustically transparent or not? All of our flexible materials, with the exception of Blackhawk UST, the ultra short throw, can be made acoustically transparent. So unlike a lot of other screen companies, everything that we do can be ultimate performance. So we talked about the screen materials with Studio Tech 100 or Studio Tech 130. We talked about Firehawk G5 or Phantom HALR. Any of those materials can be made acoustically transparent. So you're not really sacrificing anything. In this case, I'm going to do non-acoustically transparent. Do I need an opaque layer? So we most often see this in drop-down screens that are dropping down in front of a window or doorway that isn't going to be treated. And it allows us to put actually an opaque layer inside the vinyl to prevent it from bleeding any of that light through. Not something that we commonly see, but know that it's available. Material in this case, we're going to go ahead and we'll do a multi-purpose room. So we'll do Firehawk G5. And then finally, our mounting method. Wallboard is going to be most common, but if we were doing acoustically transparent, we may frame it out and do an aperture mount, or we can have the factory quote us a custom mount depending on our need. We'll choose wallboard mount. Now it's going to show me a picture of what that looks like. It's also, you'll see here, giving us the precise placement of that mount. So we can say, okay, 20 inches from each side is the first mount, and then 36 3/4 inches in from each of those is our next mount. So we can hand this to our GC or our carpenter and say, this is exactly where this needs to mount. And then select a control system. Very often in this case, we're going to do a video interface control system, which again is going to be that 12-volt trigger. And finally, 120 volt, 220 volt, or 100 volt for Japan. Obviously, we're in the United States, we're going to choose that. And now we've got our finished product. From here, we can finish it off and we've got our quote. So we can print it, we can get our drawings, anything you need. We can even place our order right from here. So this is a relatively new thing. It was in beta for a little while, but now it's available. So those of you that have access to Roy Screen Assistant, you can build your screen and place your order all in one place. Any questions on that? Awesome. Let's do one more quick thing and let's take a look at the Stewart website and some of the tools that you have here. So starting with let's talk a little bit about who Stewart is. Stewart's been around for over 70 years, and they are founded by the Stewart family and continue to be in the Stewart family today. This is a family-run company. This is all of the manufacturing done in the United States, either in California or Ohio. This is meticulous craftsmanship. This is something where your customer's screen may be built or will be built by the very same people that are building screens for Warner Brothers or Sony Pictures or for NASA, things along those lines. So this is an important part of the brand story. This is something where we talk about the fact that they have 2 Academy Awards for technical excellence. No other screen material has even one. By the way, for those of you that have worked with them, this is July. July's been with Stewart for a very long time. In fact, when I was still an integrator, July was my inside rep. So this is a company where people stick around for a long time. They know what they're talking about, and they can really help you to guide you to give your customer the best experience. Another quick thing to talk about is kind of some of their clients. This is really just an incredible list of clients that use Stewart products. And what's really interesting here is some of the things that we see are Deluxe and HBO and people like that, Sony Pictures, et cetera, et cetera. So these companies that produce content, that produce the content that your customers are going to watch, are using Stewart to produce that content. So that's an incredible thing to discuss, to say, hey, you watch a lot of Netflix, well, you know, they use Stewart products. For those of you that are Sony dealers, Netflix uses Sony products for the TV side of things. So it's a powerful thing to be able to say. And then we've got a lot of other resources for you here as far as all of the screen materials that we have available and all of their max sizes. You know, some of these, most of these, 40 feet by 90 feet. No other screen company in the world can build a screen that's 40 feet by 90 feet without seams. And that is completely seamless, not virtually seamless, but truly seamless. And then the final thing I want to talk about is this screen builder. So this is a super quick, easy way to talk about, okay, what do I want to specify for this project? Do I want it to be fixed frame, retractable? If it's retractable, do I want it to be below ceiling or above ceiling, front projection, rear projection? So in this case, let's go ahead and let's, again, do a fixed frame, and we're going to wall mount it and front projection. Do I want to use metric system or standard English? What aspect ratio do I want? I'm going to do 235:1. And let's again go with our 156-inch diagonal screen that we talked about earlier. Full control, partial control, no control. So this is what I was talking about when we discussed screen material. Full control is our dedicated space. Here, we're probably going to do Studio Tech 100 or Studio Tech 130. Partial control is that multi-purpose room, and no control is that living room. This is going to be kind of our phantom. In this case, let's do partial control. Do I need acoustically transparent? Do I need an opaque layer? Do I need 3D viewing? I don't know if any of you are still selling 3D projectors, but boy, that seemed to come and go in a hurry. I do not need an opaque layer, but I do, in this case, I am going to ask for acoustic transparency. And now we've got our wall mask series, which we just built. We've got our Balon series, which can also be acoustically transparent, our director's choice, our Vistascope, which we all just discussed. Let's go ahead and let's do wall mask. And we can learn more, and it'll take us right to the wall mask area. So I've gotten calls from dealers that have used this pretty well just to understand what's available. And certainly we've gotten some contact from end users that have used it as well. So that's what I have for everyone today. I hope you found it valuable. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing briefly to ask if anyone has any questions.
Hey, Steve, Derek Fox.
What's up, Derek?
Hey, I've found this pretty enlightening. Been a dealer for a long time. This slide deck available for me to show to possibly other folks in my group.
Yeah, I think we can make a copy of this available.
That'd be awesome. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, let's go ahead and stop recording.